Sometimes the people you love the most are the ones who teach you what pain truly means. You trusted them with your heart, your stories, your dreams, and even your secrets, believing they'd hold them gently. But one day, without warning, they betrayed you. They let go of that trust, leaving you broken in pieces. You smile to the world, but deep down, you carry a storm no one can see. And because of that pain, you hold on. You refuse to forgive. You think that if you forgive or let go, it shows weakness and means you're losing. But the truth is, forgiveness doesn't make you weak, it sets you free. In this story, you'll meet two men who once trusted each other more than brothers. They built their dreams side by side until greed and pride destroyed everything. What happened between them will show you what betrayal really costs and what forgiveness truly means. Stay with this story because by the time it ends, you may see a reflection of your own life inside it. There was a time when trust meant everything to Gideon. He wasn't rich, he wasn't chasing fame. All he wanted was a simple, honest life built with effort and people he could believe in. He met Ronan when both of them were still trying to survive. Two young men with similar hunger, not for power, but for progress. They worked small jobs, carried heavy loads, saved little coins, and dreamed of building something that would last. Ronan had charm. He could talk to anyone. Gideon had patience. He could work through anything. Together, they balanced each other. Gideon handled the work, Ronan handled the people. In a world that rewarded quick talkers and punished slow hearts, that balance was their strength. When they started their small business, it wasn't much. Just a small wooden shop on a quiet street selling goods they could barely afford to stock. But Gideon believed in building things one honest day at a time. And for a while, life seemed fair. Customers came, money flowed slowly, and friendship grew into something that looked unbreakable. People said, "Those two are like brothers." And in many ways they were. They shared meals, struggles, and laughter that made the long days shorter. They talked about the future, a bigger store, a better life, maybe even helping others one day. But trust is tested when success shows up. When small victories came, Gideon stayed the same. Ronan started to change. It was subtle at first. A few decisions made without asking. A few numbers that didn't add up. A few promises that came with excuses. Gideon noticed, but he told himself that trust meant patience. That a friend deserved understanding. He didn't know that silence can also feed betrayal. The day things broke wasn't loud. There were no arguments in the market or shouting in the street. It was the kind of betrayal that happens quietly, in papers signed behind backs, in coins counted when no one is watching. Ronan made a choice that Gideon never expected. He sold part of what they built, took the profit, and left. No explanation. No goodbye. Just a note that said he was sorry and needed to start fresh. Gideon didn't chase him. He didn't fight. He didn't even speak. He just stood inside the empty shop, staring at the place where their work used to mean something. Days turned into months. People asked questions. Gideon gave no answers. He kept working. But the fire inside him changed. It wasn't hope anymore. It was hurt. Forgiveness sounded easy when people talked about it in stories. But in real life, it felt impossible. How do you forgive someone who never asked for it? How do you forget when everything around you reminds you of what was taken? Gideon tried to move on. He worked harder, earned more, rebuilt the shop from the ground up. But no matter how many things he fixed on the outside, the inside stayed broken. He would look at new faces and still see betrayal behind their smiles. That's what pain does. It doesn't always destroy what's visible. It changes how you see everything else. He grew quieter. He stopped trusting. Even when life gave him good things again, part of him refused to feel joy. Because every time something went right, the memory of that wrong came back stronger. Years passed. People forgot what happened. Gideon didn't. He called it moving forward. But really, he was just walking in circles. Then one evening, when the world had already moved on, he heard Ronan's name again. A traveler passing through town mentioned a man who once had everything, but lost it all. Business gone, family gone, health failing. The name was the same. The story felt unfinished. For the first time in years, Gideon felt something he couldn't describe. It wasn't hate, it wasn't pity. It was something heavier, a question. Could he finally forgive? And what would forgiveness even look like now? He didn't know, but somewhere deep inside he realized that the pain he carried had lasted longer than the betrayal itself. That maybe the punishment had already been served, not by Ronan, but by himself. And that was the beginning of a different kind of journey. A journey not to rebuild trust, but to reclaim peace. Gideon told himself he had moved on. He worked longer hours, took fewer breaks, and stopped sitting where he and Ronan used to talk. Routine felt safe, but pain can live inside routine. It hides in habits and waits for quiet moments. People asked what happened. Gideon kept his answers short. It didn't work out. We went separate ways. He never mentioned the papers, the money, or the note that said "start fresh." The fewer the words, the less the wound bled, or so he thought. Gideon was married once to Mara, a woman who believed in quiet strength more than grand promises. She had stood beside him through the building years, through late nights and lean days. When the silence came, she didn't fill it with questions. She just stayed, steady, patient, reminding him that love doesn't always speak. Sometimes it simply remains. Mara watched him. She didn't push. She made sure he ate, kept the books balanced, and checked things he double-checked. She knew advice couldn't fix a heart that wasn't ready. One afternoon, a supplier offered him a cheaper deal if he'd stop selling to certain clients. Ronan's new buyers were on the list. Gideon understood the game. It was a chance to hurt the man who'd hurt him. He read the paper, folded it, and handed it back. "I don't make decisions like that," he said. The supplier argued, but Gideon stayed calm. "If my work is good, I don't need to block anyone." That night he stared at the note Ronan left. He should have burned it long ago, yet something in him needed to keep it. Forgetting felt like surrender. Forgiving felt like letting Ronan win. So he carried the pain as proof that he had been wronged. It didn't feel like proof. It felt like a lock. Weeks passed. A new helper started in the shop, young, eager, clumsy. One day the boy broke a crate and tried to hide it. Gideon shouted before he even thought. Mara stepped in quietly, moving the broken pieces aside. Gideon walked to the back room, shaking. His anger wasn't about the crate, and he knew it. That evening he told the boy, "I was wrong." The apology helped the boy, but it healed Gideon more. It reminded him that he could still choose a better response even while hurting. Months later, an old merchant who'd known both men stopped by. On his way out, he said, "You've built well. Remember, a man's worth isn't measured by how he's treated, but by what he chooses to carry." It was a simple line. It landed deep. Rumors came and went. Ronan's new venture grew, then crumbled. Some said pride, some said bad luck. Gideon listened and stayed silent. He expected to feel satisfaction, but didn't. Loss is loss, even when it happens to the one who wronged you. One evening, a traveler spoke of a man 2 towns away, once strong but now weak and coughing, always talking about the past. Before the name was said, Gideon knew it was Ronan. The thought followed him for days. Mara noticed but didn't ask. She knew some choices must be faced alone. Gideon tried to forget about it. He told himself he didn't owe anyone anything. He had already suffered and learned his lessons. But peace still wouldn't come, because some debts can't be seen or written down. Then a small thing happened that turned the lock a little. An old customer returned with a belt he'd bought a year before. It had worn out, and the warranty was past. Gideon could have said no and been right. Instead, he replaced it for free. "You didn't have to," the man said. "I know," Gideon replied. When the man left, Gideon felt lighter. Being kind when you don't have to be feels like freedom. That night, Mara told him, "It's not about what you deserve, it's about what you need." Gideon asked, "What do I need?" She said, "Peace." He asked, "How do I find it?" Mara replied, "You already know." He looked at the note again, held it over the fire, then pulled it back. Not yet. A week later, a big buyer asked Gideon to list some trusted merchants. At first, he wrote 5 names. The memory of Ronan's betrayal is still too strong. But after sealing the list, he stopped and thought. Adding Ronan's name wouldn't erase the past, but it would mean he was done carrying the anger. So he opened the list again and wrote Ronan's name. No explanation, just a quiet choice to let go. That night he slept better. Not joy, but breath. Days later, a letter arrived. The handwriting was weak but familiar. "I heard you wrote my name on a list." "You didn't have to. Thank you. I'm sorry for the past. I can't change it. I hope your days are lighter now." No signature, none needed. Gideon placed it in the same drawer as the old note, one a wound, the other a mirror. He held both in his hands and realized he could only keep one. Gideon started to change in small ways. When customers argued or orders came late, he didn't see them as another Ronan. The world was the same, but he had become calmer. The pain was still there, but slowly fading away. Then he heard that Ronan had fallen seriously sick. Not a cold, something that drains a man completely. Gideon stood in the doorway of his shop for a long time, remembering 2 young men counting coins and dreaming of never breaking. He couldn't erase that picture. That evening, Mara found him sitting at the table with both letters open. "He is sick. I want to visit him, but I don't know what to do," he said. "You do," she replied softly. "You just don't like that it's hard. If I go, I won't know what to say." "You don't have to say much," she said. "Sometimes presence is the sentence." He waited another day, set things in order, and packed a small bag. He walked the road arguing with himself, listing reasons not to go, replaying the old wound, reminding himself that forgiveness shouldn't cost this much. He walked anyway. When he reached the town, someone pointed him to a small house. He stood at the door, debating whether to knock. Time doesn't wait for permission. He knocked. A tired-looking woman opened the door and let him in. Ronan lay weak on a bed near the window, older than his years. When he saw Gideon, he tried to sit up. Gideon raised a hand. "Don't." Silence filled the room, heavy but honest. Ronan spoke first. "I didn't expect." He coughed, then whispered, "Thank you for coming." Gideon didn't answer immediately. He hadn't come for speeches. He'd come because no man can live forever with a closed fist in his chest. He needed to see if peace was more than a word. Ronan said, "I was wrong. I told myself you'd be fine. I told myself I deserved more. I told myself stories until I believed them. I'm tired of those stories." He paused. "You don't owe me anything." Gideon sat near him. He saw both versions of Ronan, the partner who dreamed beside him and the man who betrayed him. Both were true. He couldn't erase one to honor the other. "I won't pretend the past didn't happen," Gideon said. "I know," Ronan whispered. "I carried it too long. It changed me in ways I don't like. I don't want to keep living like that." Then simply, "I forgive you." The words were small. The cost was large. Ronan's shoulders shook. "I don't deserve that," he said. "It's not about what you deserve," Gideon replied. "It's about what I choose." The air felt lighter. Same room, new weight gone. 2 men had stopped feeding what was already dead. They spoke a little more. Not about details, not about fault. Gideon asked if Ronan had what he needed. The woman said they were short on a few things. Gideon made a note and said he'd send them. No big gesture, no scene, just quiet help. Before leaving, Ronan tried to apologize again. Gideon lifted a hand. "We've said enough for today." At the door, he turned back once. "Take care of yourself." A boundary, a blessing, both at once. On the road home, Gideon felt tired. Not the tired that crushes, but the tired that comes after setting down something heavy. He didn't feel joy. He felt space. And space was enough for the first day. When he returned, Mara looked up from her work. She read the answer in his face. "I did what I needed to do," he said. She smiled. "Good." That night, he tore the old note in half and threw it away. He kept the letter of apology, not as a trophy, but as proof that pain can change shape when you stop feeding it. In the weeks that followed, life didn't suddenly get easy. But Gideon had changed. He no longer expected the world to be fair. He chose to be fair anyway. He no longer expected everyone to be loyal. He chose to be loyal anyway. He learned that forgiveness isn't a favor to someone else. It's a release for yourself. Forgiveness costs pride, the right to stay angry, and the comfort of being the victim. But the return is peace, the kind that lets you breathe again, sleep again, and look at your own hands without seeing a fist. Gideon didn't talk much about that visit. He just returned to his work and carried on. But something in him had changed. Not on the outside, not in his routine, but in how he breathed through his days. Before, every morning began with a heaviness that had no name. Now the weight was gone. The world hadn't turned kind overnight, but it no longer felt like it was fighting him. He began to notice things he hadn't noticed in years. The sound of tools in the morning, the way customers smiled when he listened to them, the quiet comfort of eating in peace. None of these things were new. They just felt lighter now that he wasn't dragging the past into every hour. Forgiveness didn't make him weak. It made him quiet in a different way. A kind of quiet that didn't hide pain, but peace. He didn't tell Mara what he had said that day. She didn't ask. She already saw it in his face, in the calm behind his words, in the stillness of his voice. The kind of stillness that comes only after someone has stopped running from their own mind. Weeks later, Gideon received another letter. It was short. Ronan thanked him again, said his health was getting worse, and that he didn't want to leave this world with unfinished words. The letter said, "If you ever think of me, I hope it's not with anger." Gideon read it once and didn't keep it. He didn't need to. He had already made peace with what needed peace. When people talked about Ronan in the market, some with pity, some with judgment, Gideon stayed silent. He didn't defend and he didn't condemn. He had learned that everyone sees a story differently, depending on where they stand in it. One evening, a young worker in the shop asked him, "Do you ever regret forgiving someone who hurt you that much?" Gideon thought about it. "No," he said. "Regret is what kept me from forgiving. Forgiveness is what freed me from regret." The worker didn't fully understand, but he nodded anyway. Some lessons take time to grow. Months later, word came that Ronan had passed away. Gideon didn't cry. He didn't feel relief either. He simply stood at the door of his shop, watching the people walk by, thinking about how easily time separates people and how easily pride keeps them apart. He didn't attend the burial. But that evening, he lit a single candle on the counter, not for Ronan, but for the peace that took him years to find. He didn't pray for forgiveness. He simply whispered, "Thank you," not because the pain was gone, but because it no longer ruled him. From that day forward, Gideon worked with a steady heart. He helped where he could. He spoke less about fairness and more about effort. He taught his workers that success without peace is failure in disguise. And every time he looked at his hands, he didn't see the scars of betrayal anymore. He saw the strength of someone who learned to open them again, not to hold on, but to let go. Sometimes life doesn't give us closure. People hurt us, walk away, and never come back to explain why. We wait for apologies that never arrive, and we tell ourselves that peace will come when they finally say, "I'm sorry." But the truth is, peace doesn't wait for them. It waits for us. Forgiveness isn't about giving someone a clean record. It's about giving yourself a clean heart. Because when you carry pain long enough, it becomes part of your identity. You wake up with it, you talk through it, and even your silence starts sounding like anger. Gideon learned that the hard way. He didn't find peace when Ronan said sorry. He found it when he stopped letting the past make his choices. And that's what forgiveness really means. Not pretending nothing happened, but deciding that it will no longer control who you become. You don't have to invite people back into your life to forgive them. You don't even have to tell them. Sometimes forgiveness is silent. It's when you stop replaying the memory and start living again. It's when you stop seeking revenge and start seeking rest. It's when you realize that being right isn't worth being bitter. And yes, forgiveness costs something. It costs your pride, your right to stay angry, your comfort in being the victim. But holding on costs more. It costs your peace, your sleep, your smile, and your ability to trust good people again. That's why you forgive, not because they deserve it, but because you do. Because your heart was not made to be a storage room for pain. Because every moment spent hating someone is a moment stolen from your own joy. You might never get an apology, you might never hear the truth, but you can still write your own ending. You can still walk away free. Forgiveness doesn't mean losing, it means refusing to lose twice. You lost once when they hurt you. Don't lose again by letting that hurt live inside you forever. So today, maybe you can do what Gideon did. You don't have to send a letter. You don't have to make a call. Maybe all you need to do is whisper it. Not to them, but to yourself. I'm done carrying this. And when you do, you'll notice the same thing Gideon did. The world won't suddenly change, but something inside you will. It won't be loud. It won't be dramatic. It'll just be quiet. The kind of quiet that finally feels like peace. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. We will meet again.